Howdy, folks. It's Dave. Let me get situated. Hopefully you enjoyed the new intro. You saw one last week on the R&D show. We did a new intro for that one, and we had done one for mine too, so I'm get to be a little bit more silly, as you all know. So how's everybody doing today? Monday night after a nice weekend. Today I just want to go over the Acela again. So quite a few months ago, back earlier this year, I did go over the Legacy Acela, and that was our prototype that myself and my team built, and in the engineering department. Now, the one that I have here today is the pre-production sample from the factory, and it has all of our released code in it. So the only thing you're going to not see on this sample is the deco. So it'll be fresh shots like in just flat grade plastic, but it will have all the sounds and all of the engine code and sound code and the sound car as well that will be in the released product. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Let me add the other camera here and start up the layout. I just realized that if I remove the view of me, you can't hear me. So I guess we'll just leave my face up on the screen. All right, so I want you to know before I pull it into screen, the audio that we have in this one is specific for the Santa Fe version of the Acela. We also obviously are doing the two Amtrak versions as well as the Polar Express version. So today we'll be reviewing the Santa Fe version, which I'll go over the differences between all of them here in just a bit. So let me pull the train into view. It does have the working ditch lights. All right. Now, before we get going into all of the advanced features of the Acela set, let's just go through the different horns. As most everyone knows by now, new Legacy engines do have 5 different horn choices. And those are all available by pressing the aux 1 key on your cab 2 remote. Or if you were using the Lion Chief app, you use the pitch sliders there on that app. So I'll go through the 5 different horns we have available in this set. Obviously, this is the default Acela horn. And these are all quillable. There's a higher pitch version. Lower pitched version. More of a modern diesel horn. And another modern diesel horn. So really just your pick of which horn you like. That way you can mix it up, especially if you have different Acela sets and you don't want them all sounding the same. And then obviously for the bell, it's the same. We have the same bell with 5 different pitches. And that's also changed by using the aux 1 key and pressing up on the bell. It's another great way to customize your train. So let's dive into the nice features of the Acela set. I probably will carry around the camera and so I can walk you up and down the train and show you the different features. But first off, let's just start on the head end. I'm going to take the phone out of the holder here so I can start pointing it around. Now the loco does have the headlights in the center, and then the marker lights are red when the engine's in reverse. Now, there will be crew figures in the cab as well as lighted cab dials up on the front. Really tough to see from this view, but there are lighted instrument panels in there. And if I start moving the engine here, the cab light goes off, but you can see that the instrument panel stays on. There we go. You can see it. So the instrument panel will stay lit. Now, one thing you do is that this is a end-to-end or point-point train. So whichever unit is the forward-facing unit is the unit where the crew would be. So when we have these in reverse, or if this unit here is in reverse, you're going to notice that the instrument panel will turn off, as well as other features in the sound system, such as the horn, bell, and dialogue no longer coming through this unit, but rather the other unit back there. And I'll show that more as I get up and get moving this guy around. Let's talk about the control switches. The switches for the Acela engines are going to be under this hatch here on the roof. Now, since this is a prototype sample, there are a lot of detail parts missing. This really is just meant for us to do our code work development in. So a lot of detail parts are missing. But you will see the switches up here on the roof. And there's 5 of them, actually. There's the run program. That's for changing the TMC CID number. You have the Bluetooth on-off switch. That way, if you want to disable Bluetooth so somebody else can't control your engine. We also have 2 switches for the pantographs. One of the switches is to lock the pantograph in the down position. That's a really good switch to use if you are if you have a layout with a lot of bridges or tunnel portals or anything that would really just take out a pantograph. You don't want that to happen, so you would lock those in the down position. The other pantograph switch is to lock it in whatever position you set. So if you want to lock the pantographs up all the time, regardless of what you do with the train, you would have all the pantographs raised and then flip that switch to lock, and then those pantographs will stay in that position. And then the last switch is what we call the unit pair switch. Those of you who are familiar with the F40PHs we did 4 years ago or so now, as well as the Long Island Railroad cab car we did 2 years ago, those had the unit pair switch. And what that does is when it's in unit position, the engine just operates as a normal legacy engine. But when you have both switches on both engines set to the pair position, this will act like an end-to-end train. So what will happen is when you have this locomotive in the forward position, all of the sounds such as the bell, the horn, and the crew talk will come from this unit. But when you switch direction, all of those sounds will be disabled and will come from the other unit. So that's what the unit pair switch does, and the manual goes over that pretty thoroughly. Next we have, let me put the hatch back on this guy. Then obviously one of the stars of the show when it comes to the locomotives is the pantographs themselves. Now I'm going to cycle power here on the layout because I want you to see what happens when the set first gets power. So power's now off, right? And when we turn power to the layout back on, you're going to see that the pantographs stayed down. Now, nothing's going to happen until you address the engine or the train, however you have it built. So here I'll hit the startup button. You'll notice all the pantographs will raise. And then the front pantograph will go down. So now you're in run position. When electric is running, the rear pantograph is always the one raised. That's the same with a GG1 or any other electric engine. Usually has the rear pantograph in the upward position and the forward pantograph down. Now, when you switch directions with the Acela set, the pantographs will automatically switch. So let me put this into reverse. And now the set is set in the opposite direction, just like it should be. Next I want to show is that these do have ground lamps, which are always a nice touch. And these do go out when the train set reaches a certain speed, typically speed step 23 if you have this set to a legacy in the remote. So that's another good lighting feature anyways for the engines. Now I want to go back to the Cab 2 real quick and talk about how these get programmed. So those with the original Acela set, the TMCC set, will be familiarized with knowing that the Cab 2 has a Acela TMCC setting. We actually ended up not using the Acela legacy setting. And the reason for that was simply due to the feature set that the Acela set now has. I'm going to put the phone back in the holder. So instead, this new Acela, the legacy Acela, should just be run under an electric type. If you have track IR, which I do here on the layout, the Acela will automatically update its information, the engine road name, road number, and also set the type to electric in the Cab 2 remote. So if you notice that happens when you run your set, that's supposed to happen. And again, the manual covers that as well. So now I'm going to get up and walk on back and show some other features on the set before I start doing more demos. Okay. This is just a regular passenger car or coach car. It actually has 2 doors instead of 4, so you'll notice that there aren't doors on this end. And they are lighted interiors. They are flicker-free lighting, so that means there's a capacitor on the board. Keeps the lights from flickering when you go over dirty spots or switches or anything else that would cause brief interruptions in power. If you open up one of the 2 hatches on the roof, that's where you're going to find the light on-off switch. So if you want to run these without lights on, that's where you would go to find that switch. And this guy here, this is the Station Sound Diner car. And this one I'll come back to. I want to show the rest of the set first. But the Station Sound Diner has its own special feature set that goes along with these engines that I definitely want to demonstrate tonight. But just again, showing off some of the details. This is just another one of the standard cars. Now, all cars will come with figurines inside. Some of these don't have them simply because they're just engineering prototype samples. And here's the other locomotive. So this is the rear end locomotive. It's going to have the same lighting features with the headlights, marker lights, illuminated interior, as well as the illuminated instrument panel, and then run lights as well, or ground lights. And the switches here are all the same underneath this hatch on top. And they are labeled on the casting. It's just hard to see on video. That snaps on pretty easy. And then the drawbars in all of these are similar to the original drawbars, except for this Acela set does not need drawbar communication. So there's no IR connector that you have to worry about on the drawbar. It's just simply mechanical drawbar, which does make it a little more reliable than the original Acela set. So I figured for this one I would have to get up and walk around, simply because it's such a big train, bigger than I'm used to having to show here, where I can just sit here and run the whole thing by me. All right, let me set that back up. I want to boot the train back up, and then I'm going to bring the Station Sound Diner into frame, and we can start listening to that guy. Bring the sounds down, but I do want to talk about the sounds real quick. One differentiating feature from this guy. Obviously, we have sounds in both the lead engine and the trailing engine, as well as the station sound diner car, right? So it's nice to have that almost stereo sound system to the whole train. Kind of my favorite feature of the set. My second favorite feature that is an improvement over the original Acela set is that in the original, only the lead engine was powered. In this set, we decided to really up your oomph. So the trailing unit is powered as well. So the two units work together to push the whole train all over your layout, regardless of your grades or anything like that, as well as the cars that the set comes with, plus the expansion pack, which does include the station sound diner. So you can really put a lot of cars in between these two locomotives, and there's nowhere that they won't be able to push them or pull them. So now I'm going to pull the set up, and we can start listening to and talking about the station sound diner. Of course, it helps if I throw the switch. There we go. And so here's the station sound diner. I did show it a bit ago. Let me just grab the camera. One thing I want to note on this sample is that you can see the top of the speaker in there. This is just, again, the prototype. And for the production run, we will be covering that so that you will not see the speaker when you look through the windows. Instead, you'll just see the nice bistro, the people in there getting their coffee, and the guy over here behind the counter making the coffee, because that's what's important, is coffee. At least for me. I don't know about you guys, but I got to have the coffee. So let's go ahead and let me address the station sound diner and start listening to some of the audio that goes along with that. Again, this is the Chief, right? So this is actually a bistro car, the Chief bistro car. And a lot of the dialogue that is included with this is specific for that Santa Fe unit. So then when you have the Amtrak versions, they will say specific Amtrak announcements. And then the Polar Express will be its own beast as well, with its own specific Polar Express announcements, and same with the locomotives. So, those familiar with station sound diners, which I have demoed on this show before, will know that the controls are pretty much the same. We just have modified dialogue and modernized dialogue. A lot of the station sound diners we do are older trains, kind of transition era, 50s, 60s, and not so much modern. So that was kind of a fun new project for us working with this one, is that we were able to more modernize the sounds. So let's go ahead and listen to some of this.
We would like to welcome you aboard at this time.
Now boarding, platform number 3, the Chief.
Attention please. The Chief is now boarding.
Now, the doors on the new Acela are not mechanically operated. So you can't open them using the Cab 2 remote. But for those that want to still have the option of opening or closing them, we do offer both the ability to open the doors manually. And to do that, you press up here towards the top of the door, sort of where that sticker is. You just press it, and then it pops out, and then you can slide it. Now the door is open. And one neat thing about that is when the doors are open, we do have switches in there that indicate the door is open. So the red marker here up at the top, and then there's also a light down here underneath the door that's lit when the doors are open. And with the door open, if you have the Cab 2 remote, you can press the aux 3 key to actually play the door opening or door closing sound effect.
Stand clear of the doors.
So now the door is open. Now I can close it. You just slide it all the way back, and then you push it in until it clicks. And now it's closed, and you see the lights gone off.
Stand clear of the doors.
So that's fun. Not having the motorized version is a little bit of a takeaway from the original, but still being able to manually open the doors as well as have the sound effects does still allow you to create whatever scenario you want with the Acela on your layout. So let's go back through some of the other announcements.
Attention, please. The chief is now boarding.
So that character, which is the station platform character, is actually an automated voice, not a real recorded person. So that mimics what you do hear modern days with announcements at train stations. And then the crew, obviously, on board, you do have the conductor, and you do have what normally would be the steward character is basically the person behind the bar or the counter in the bistro car.
We would like to welcome all ticketed passengers aboard.
Right this way. Welcome aboard. Now boarding. Platform number 3, the Chief. Welcome. Let me help you with those bags. All aboard.
Now the audio is different when the train is stopped versus when the train is in motion. So obviously the announcements you've been listening to are with the train stopped. I can just roll the train at speed step 1 so that you can hear the in motion sounds. And what would help if I actually turned it. There we go.
We are approaching the next station. Please gather your things. We are approaching the next station. Please gather your things.
And it'll randomize through a number of different announcements.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next station stop and final station stop is coming up. We would like to thank you for choosing the Chief.
The Chief.
Attention, please. The chief is now boarding.
Yep. And now you get the other announcements once I come to a stop. So, all right, I'm going to bring the train back. Similar to our legacy ABBA units, like F units or E units, the engines are able to run either under the same TMCC ID, which is what I'm doing here. Both engines are currently programmed as TMCC ID number 1. But you also have the option of giving both the lead unit and the trailing unit different TMCC IDs. So if the trailing unit was, say, ID number 2, that's when you would use the train builder. And the great thing about using the train builder is that you can also add the station sound diner. So in the train builder, I would add engine 1, and then you would add the station sound diner, and then you would add the trailing unit, which would be ID number 2, and you actually reverse the direction of that unit. And that's how your train would operate. And with the train, let me throw it onto this camera. There we go. With the train, you have the icons for the locomotives here as default. So you can see the pantograph up and down buttons there on the bottom left or bottom right, and that's for when you want to manually control the pantographs. But with the station sound diner, if you want to quickly switch over to the diner, all you do is you hit this button here, the train link button by my finger, and that takes you over to controls for the station sound diner. And you can see at the top of the screen there where it says the Chief Bistro car. So then when it switches back over to the locomotives. So the train builder is the most convenient way to get between the controls for the locomotives and the controls for the station sound diner. So that's usually how I recommend running this. But like I said, if you don't use the station sound diner, you can program both Acela locomotives under the same TMCC-ID and just run it as an engine. And that's when the unit pair switch comes in handy. The other time the unit pair switch comes in handy is when you are running your Acela with Bluetooth. So if you have the Universal Remote or the Lion Chief app, you're going to want to put the unit pair switch into the pair mode, run it with the Bluetooth, and then that's when your sounds will transfer. And by sounds transferring, this is what I mean. So let me switch back over to the locomotives. And now the unit here on screen, the lead unit, is currently in forward. And I'll turn the sounds back up. And so if you do anything like the horn, the bell, and the dialogue.
This is the head end. Ready for our priorities on 22. Over.
Hold for clearance. Out.
Now when you go in reverse, the trailing unit back there is now the lead unit. So now when I play the horn, you hear it coming out of that unit instead, right? The horn, the bell, or the dialogue. So that switches automatically. Speaking of dialogue, we did do a new character here, a modern character, hopefully you noticed. But the engineer in the Acela is a female character.
Engineer train 30 Barstow. They've secured the head end. Over.
Please stand by. Out.
This is the head end. Ready for our priorities on 22. Over.
You have a clear signal. You may depart. Out.
And the tower character is an older character, I think from the original Acela release. I believe so. So that's the throwback to the original Acela with the new female engineer character in the locomotives. And then the other sound is the 7 key, which is the train sounds. And that's going to give you more generic, kind of the chatter that you would hear on real life radios.
I'll get you guys moving right now.
We actually recorded a lot of actual chatter on railroad radios and recreated it that way. So a lot of it is true. So
Those pantographs aren't making full contact. Send someone to look at it.
that one maybe not so prototypical, but still fun.
I'll get you guys moving right now.
That reminds me of one more thing when it comes to the pantographs. When the engine is moving, this train set is moving, you will hear the arcing sound effect of the catenary going across the pantograph. We used that first when we did the lighted arcing effect on the Vision Line GG1 back in 2016. Obviously, these do not have the arcing LEDs in them, but we did still include the sound effect. And if you're not a fan of that sound effect, all you do is you press the aux 3 key, and that disables that sound effect. So now you don't have to hear the whipping or the arcing of the pantographs. And when you press aux 3, it'll turn it back on. See, there it goes. So another fun way for you to customize your set and run it how you want. All right. So I'm going to go more into detail on some of the aspects of the passenger car. I actually have one here off the track, or else I could have made the train even longer. But let's go ahead and Well, I don't need to move that camera. What am I doing? All right, we'll put it down here like this. And again, I just wanted to show, first off, the door. So when you get these cars, there will be a sticker that goes over the top of the cars like this and connects to the doors. That sticker will be removable, but it's to remind you of where to press and also to read the manual, because there will be a section in the Acela manual for how to open and close these doors. But here, kind of in this top left corner, is where you want to push. And you will feel a click. You can hear the click too, but you can't really hear it. Well, you might be able to hear it if I turn the train off. Goodness. But that's how you get the door to close or to open, right? And then you can slide the door. And then you see inside. And that's when the light down here below the door, as well as the red marker light up here at the top of the car, those will illuminate. And then you just slide it back in and push it again to close it. And the same goes, this is the 4-door version, so there's doors at every end of the car, just to demonstrate it. And you hear that click, or you feel that click, that's when you know it's closed. Now talking about another feature of the car, the real the real Acela cars, when they go around corners, they do tip. And that's because the Acela is a high-speed train. So to make up for some of that centrifugal force going around corners, the cars will usually tip into the corners, kind of like how I'm showing, and that's for passenger comfort. We do this on these cars with the all-new truck bolster here. So you can, let me see if I can see that ramp there. So when it turns, it'll push on that ramp and the whole truck will actually tilt. Now, obviously, the truck will stay flat on the track and the body of the car will tilt. So this is what we call passive tilting, and kind of just tilts with that ramping. Now, obviously, the engines are not going to have that. The real-life ones don't have the tilting effect. Apparently, they just don't care about the comfort of the crew and what boss does. But but the passenger cars do have it. Another thing, I'm going to pull one of the engines off the track because I want to show an upgrade, or at least an upgrade in my opinion, of the locomotives. And this is an upgrade over the original TMCC version. We did all those many years ago. But if anybody's familiar with the original version of the Acela that we did, changing the traction tires on the locomotive was an absolute bear of a process. You basically had to disassemble the truck to get new traction tires on this. Well, we completely retooled new trucks. So we have a new core that was able to make these back drivable wheels, new frame side frame details and everything. But it does make it similar to all of our other legacy diesel trucks, in that now when you want to change the traction tire, you pop the traction tire off and it'll just come out from in between the wheel and the side frame without having to disassemble the whole truck. So it's like a 2-minute job to change the traction tires, which is pretty nice if you ask me. Now, the lead locomotive is the one that does have the track IR. So you see that here. That's for the LCS IR compatibility. And then the locomotives and the cars all do have the kinematic drawbar. Excuse the zip tie I have here. That was just a marker for something I was using. But when the cars do go around the corner, the drawbars will come out a bit, and that is to give more operating room between the cars when in corners. But then back in straights, the couplers will center and pull each other closer, so you get a more prototypical appearance of the cars and engines gap in between. So, and you can see that there's a spring right here, and that's what tries to pull that drawbar back into the home position. So that way when you're going from a curve back to a straight, it assists in pulling it back into the straight position. I mean, if you have really tight curves, like I have on this layout, which are 072, which is the minimum for the Acela set. Sometimes this drawbar does need to swing more. So these body details here do actually come out automatically with the drawbar so that you can negotiate these tighter corners. And the same exists on the passenger cars as well. So those are just some of the mechanical features I wanted to show you guys. Because there was a lot of engineering put into this Acela set. I definitely appreciate all the engineering that went into it well before my time. I mean, when this came out the first time, I was a teenager. So to be able to bring it out in the legacy form is actually quite an honor. And it's been nice working with all of my engineers as well as Ryan to get these Acelas right where we want them. Reliability at the foremost of our minds, as well as playability, functionality, with 2 motorized units and sound sets everywhere. And I've also been looking at some of the pictures of the deco from the factory, and especially the Polar version, and the deco is definitely looking good. So I think people are going to be very excited when we get these, and I know I will be as well. All right, so I'm going to pull the choo-choo cam off because that's all I got for the Acela. Is there any questions you guys have, whether it is Acela related or something else? You can ask those questions now before I log off. Yes, the Acela is all I'm going to demo tonight, and the reason for that is even with just demoing the Acela, it still has been a 40-minute episode. But I'll be back in a couple weeks or a month with some more trains to demo. C-Liner, we are not going to see the C-Liner until sometime next year. That one is in a factory that we are trying to bring up to speed. So that one's going to take a little bit of time. The 1218, I will talk about the Class A's in a future version or future episode, I'm sorry. The sample that you may have saw at York or on our R&D show last Friday, the 3D printed sample is not really an operating sample. It was more to look at. So, Camelbacks, those I could have swore the Camelbacks already shipped. At least I know I have the Halloween version. Yeah, so those should be soon. The Acela is also probably going to be, I would say, January or February. They won't make it this year, but they will be early next year. Will the Station Sound Diner have... Yes. So the Station Sound Diners do have announcements specific to the stops depending on the location. Whether it's actually the Station Sound Diner or the engineer character does as well. Now, the one we demoed tonight was the Santa Fe, so you may have heard the engineer character say Barstow. So that would have been, like Barstow, California. But with the Amtrak version, there is Northeast Corridor related announcements. I can't remember which ones. Yeah, I mean, they're. I don't know if it was Philadelphia or New York, but there's like 4 of them in there. You'll just have to find out when you get yours. But yes, there are specific ones in there. Will the front of the Acela, better known as the nose of the train, be replaceable? It does come off, yes. Our Acela fan. That's a very appropriate name, Acela fan. But yes, the nose cone on these engines does or is removable. And it actually does have the brass dummy scale coupler behind it, like the real one does. And there's other details in there, separately applied details as well. It's actually very nicely detailed, and it will all have full deco. And then you just put the cone back on and pop it up. These are very highly detailed trains. So... all right, guys, that's all I'm going to go here over tonight. Well, there's one more question. The Mohawks. The Mohawks are not going to make it, I think. They might be the end of December, but I know if not, they will be January. So those ones will be tight as well, but they're coming. A couple more months. So I'm going to sign off here, and I hope you guys all appreciated the demo of the Acela. And look again for me in 2 weeks or a month. I'm not sure yet when the next episode will be, but I'll have plenty more to share. We have a lot going on around the engineering department at Lionel, and I always love sharing it with you guys just so you can kind of see a sneak behind the curtains for what we're developing and what'll be shipping to you. So have a good night and a good week, and we'll talk later.